Today on Studio 18 Live, presented by Old Venice Pizza Company, we'll be discussing the upcoming LSU game, Dr. Khayat's new book, and much more. To join the conversation, tweet your questions using hashtag Studio18, or you can email your questions to studio18@olemiss.edu. Here now are Michael Thompson, AD for Marketing and Communications, and this week's guest, former Chancellor and author, Dr. Robert Khayat.
Welcome back to Studio 18 Live, presented by Old Venice Pizza Company. We have a very, very special edition of Studio 18 Live for you today. We have a very special guest. But before we get to our guest, this week's Twitter question that we posted was, what is your favorite memory of the Ole Miss LSU rivalry? I think our guest is going to be able to share a little bit about that rivalry as well. But tweet your answers in. Make sure to use hashtag Studio18, and you'll be seeing your answers scrolling across the bottom of the screen as you watch today's episode. So let's get to our first guest, Chancellor Khayat.
Okay.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I mean, it's an honor to have you here. This is going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Thank you.
I see you are also on Twitter. So we asked that question on Twitter and got a lot of responses. But you played in some of the most legendary LSU Ole Miss series games of all time. Talk a little bit about the '59 season, and if that wasn't your favorite memory, then what was?
My favorite memory may be surprising to you. It was actually 1999, and we played them in Baton Rouge, and Deuce McAllister was our running back, and Todd Wade was our tackle. And we literally ran the football down their throats. I mean, just play after play after play, where one team just so clearly whipped another team. It just could have been sweeter, and there was nothing extra colorful about it. It was just line up and run off tackle.
Smash
bingo, bingo. And we just kept making yards and scoring touchdowns. And I love that. Now, there have been a lot of other games too, of course, that stand out, and a lot of fluke games where balls got tipped or the punt return of '59 and all that. But for me, my favorite was watching Deuce and Todd Wade together demolish LSU.
Yeah, that was big. What about that '59 season though? There's two big games there.
Yeah, it's hard for us today to comprehend the magnitude of that game because first of all, television had not arrived yet. Right. So the only games on TV were the bowl games and the pro games regionally. And so the entire nation was focused on Baton Rouge. October 31st, 1959. We had Charlie Flowers, who was our consensus All-American Heisman Trophy candidate. They had Billy Cannon, who had the same status. And it was a defensive football game. I mean, you knew from the beginning that's what it was going to be. And we scored early, made a field goal in the first quarter, I think, and we were ahead 3-0. And LSU never crossed the 50. The only time they crossed the 50, other than the punt return, it was on an intercepted pass, and we held them for 3 downs, and they tried a field goal, and Marvin Terrell, one of our All-American guards, blocked the field goal. So that's the only time they were ever on our side of the 50. And so we kept the ball, and Coach Vaught was in a very conservative mode. And I went back and counted the punt. We punted 9 times.
9 times.
9 times, and we only punted. People say you punted on first down a lot. I think we punted on first down maybe twice. But I know what his thinking was. The field was wet. We're going to get them backed up on their 30 or 20, and they're going to fumble, and we're going to score. But it just didn't work out that way.
That is wow. Now, why would you punt on first down?
Well, because he was so overly conservative that he was afraid we would fumble.
It was if you were backed up, maybe on the 1 or 2.
Well, but we were never back there. We were always outside the 20. And Jake Gibbs was one of. We had 4 quarterbacks who were playing. All of them were playing, and Jake was in the game and did the punting. Jake averaged 53 yards a kick on 9,
53 yards,
which is a pretty good game average. Yeah. I'm current on this information because I reread it, the play-by-play, in order to have it correct for this book. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, as chancellor for 15 years, I mean, or maybe just under 15 years, but you saw lots and lots of ups and downs in athletics.
I did.
But in that position, how did you kind of view your role in athletics?
Well, I tried to view it as the same way I viewed the academic divisions and student divisions. That the director of athletics was the person who was responsible for the department, had authority to run the department.
That's right.
And so I tried to be available as a consultant to Pete Boone and to John Schaefer during the time he was here if they needed to talk to me. And the fact that I had played, lots of people thought, boy, that gives you one up.
Yeah.
Well, it's just not so. The game is not the same game I played, and so it's a very different world. And so I tried my best not to micromanage. I would have conversations with Pete about different decisions, and we worked hard together on the physical facilities improvements. And because of some of the negatives that went on during those 14 years, the last 2 years with Houston Nutt, for example, and the disappointment about David Cutcliffe leaving, and Ed Ogeron not really working out as a head coach. A wonderful recruiter and a wonderful coach, but maybe not a head coach. So there's some negative memories, but there's so many positive achievements that took place. We spent $150 million on athletics facilities.
That's amazing.
I tell you,
That is
it
amazing.
really is amazing. And salaries became competitive.
Right.
Facilities were improved. Academic center, we did not have a track ever in the history of Ole Miss until those years. All the women's facilities were built. And so we made a lot of progress getting a foundation laid. And what's so exciting to me now is to see these bright, young, capable people, Ross and Hugh and others, who are taking what was done and building on it, and they're ready to roll.
They are.
And I think there's a great sense among all of us that Ole Miss athletics is about to blossom again.
There's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, while your name is very, very big on the law school, it is on so many other plaques of buildings, the Gillum and IPF and all these other places. It's you definitely have left a big mark on our facilities, which is awesome.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you. One of the things that it's difficult for the fans to understand, and because athletics is so emotional.
It is.
It's so colorful. It is so much fun. It builds such community, and there's nothing feels quite as good as being with friends and winning a game or the game. But a university is, believe it or not, a lot more than athletics. And so the chancellor's, one of his jobs or her jobs is to try to keep it balanced. Because it's real easy to say, let's go play, let's play football
Right.
or basketball instead of let's teach Greek.
That's right.
Or let's teach English or whatever. And so the chancellor spends a lot of time trying to maintain balance. And because athletics is so emotional and so visible, it's difficult.
That is hard.
Yeah.
That is very hard. So, and a lot of this stuff you talk about in this book, and this book has got to be a huge, huge undertaking. So talk about, I mean, when did you decide that you wanted to write a book? And then, I mean, how long does something like that take?
Well, it took a year to write it, to actually, from the day I looked at that blank computer screen and
That's
started,
daunting.
it started, yeah. And, but I'd been thinking about it for a while. People who are in public positions they have access to the background information, the things the general public doesn't know. The public sees the headline and the summary of the story, and they don't have any idea how you got to that point.
Yeah.
So I thought if I would just write this book and select some of the really important events and tell the story and tell the truth. And where I was wrong, say I was wrong. Or where somebody was right, say they were right. And so that's what I tried to do with it. And I tried to balance the academic part of it with the athletics part of it. So there's a pretty good section on athletics in the book. Had a funny thing happen. I had two very prominent authors read it for me when it was in its galley form. And one of them said, boy, I wish you'd put more football in it. And the other one said, I wish you'd take all that football, I wish you'd take all that football stuff out of it.
You cannot please everyone.
Well, you
I think
can't,
that's
but I
what
think
we
it
learned.
does demonstrate the balance, the requirement.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a big balance. So if you it took about a year to write, was it consistently writing almost every day?
I called John. Well, I actually emailed John Grisham, and I said I need advice, and I'm going to try to write this book, and please just give me some lessons.
Right.
And I teasingly said, how do I grow a 2-day beard? And he said, when your beard is gray, you don't grow a 2-day beard. So we got that out of the way. But he said, you ought to shoot for 300 pages. He said, if more than 300 pages, it's too long. Mm-hmm. And it's better if you can have shorter chapters. And so if you read the book, you'll see that some chapters are a page and a half. Yeah. Some of them are 5 pages. And another thing I learned that you do is you try to create some drama. And when you're dealing with Ole Miss and Ole Miss athletics, you don't have to create, the drama is there. You don't have to create it.
You gotta retell it.
Yeah, just tell it and try to tell it in a way that is easily understood, and then not quite finish the story. Get the story started. Mm-hmm. I mean, we start talking about Phi Beta Kappa early. Well, it doesn't close real late.
I noticed that.
And I'll tell you another thing that impressed me as I wrote the book is how many different initiatives were underway from different directions and how they would coincide. I mean, it was just stunning how often we will have been talking about doing something, mm-hmm. and boom, something would occur, and we'd have an opportunity to do it, or we'd have a reason for not doing it. I mean, just a real quick story. Yeah. One of the leading programs on our campus is the Croft Institute for International Studies. This is how that came to be. I had taught Jerry Abdallah in law school, and he was head of Croft Industries. Mm-hmm. And his son, Jerry Jr., came to Ole Miss and was sitting out on a hillside with 5 other young men, khaki pants, t-shirt, flip-flop shoes, watching the girls walk by. That is an Ole Miss tradition. And so I clipped the photograph out of the paper, wrote a note. I said, "Dear Jerry, it's great to have another Abdallah at Ole Miss." 2 days later, I got a phone call from him. He says, "I need to come see you." I said, "Well, I'd love to see you. Come on." And he came in. I said, "What would you like to talk about?" He said, I want to give some money to Ole Miss." I said, "That's wonderful because we need it. And what do you have in mind?" And he said, "Well, I'm not sure what I want to do with it, but I thought about $60 million would be the gift." Wow. And it blew me out of my chair, you know. And so I immediately called Carolyn Staten, who was the provost. I said, "Carolyn, please get over here to this office fast. Let's have a chit chat with Jerry about what he wants to do." And we immediately seized on international studies, and we agreed that we would study the East, China, mm-hmm. Europe, and America. That would be it. And so, South America. And so the Croft Institute was born and funded by Jerry Abdallah, and what prompted it was a clipping out of the Mississippian.
Of his son.
Yeah, and now they've given, the Croft Foundation has now given close to probably $50 million to the, and we are now the leading Chinese education program in America. In America. Is that not amazing? But that's the sort of event, serendipitous, it might be the word. I'm not sure what the right word is, but more than once that sort of thing happened.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So you're a legend here on campus for lots of reasons.
Well, I left in time. I mean, one of the things you have to do is know when to leave.
But it is fascinating. Ever since I've worked here, and even was a student here, I had so many people when they would describe you, they couldn't stop from saying that you would pick up trash as you walked through campus and just do it. And you didn't do it so people would see it. You did it because you wanted to make campus look beautiful, and that was important to you. Talk about a little bit about what you're.
Well, you're being nice. The truth is, I'm obsessive compulsive. Okay, but our little house where I grew up down in Moss Point, there were 6 of us. We lived in a little bitty house, a little bitty yard. But my mother taught us that if we would take care of what we had, and we kept it looking nice, we would feel better, and it would make the little community better. So when I became chancellor and we moved into that beautiful chancellor's home down there, the first morning I took a walk, and there was paper, there were cans, there was trash everywhere. And I thought, what is going on? You know, I hadn't really noticed it so much since I'd been at the law school, because I was focused on the law school, okay? And so then I started looking for receptacles. Well, there weren't any. So there wasn't any place to put the garbage. And so we immediately bought these big green, expensive, but very functional garbage cans. And every morning at 6, I walked from the chancellor's house around the campus, and I went different routes. But I would just naturally, as I went, pick it up, and there weren't many people out at 6. So it certainly wasn't a showboat thing to do. I just wanted the campus clean, because I believe people feel better in a clean environment. And I know that your guests are impressed when they come and they see that you really care about your property and you take care of it.
I think you're exactly right. First impressions are huge. So as part of that, you hired Jeff McManus.
I did.
And I know Jeff, and he is a fascinating individual, very bright guy. Tell me about that.
We had never really funded our landscaping program. Joe Simmons was the person who had done that for years, and he was really good, but he didn't have any money. And so we didn't have any equipment, we didn't have enough staff, we couldn't buy fertilizer and plants and pine straw and all that business. So Larry Martindale, who played basketball here, had become very successful in business with the Ritz-Carlton hotels and with Waffle Houses.
That's right.
And so Larry and Susan were here for a visit, and they said, we'd like to do something to help the university. And I said, well, that would be terrific. We need help. And they said, we'd like to help landscape the university. So I'm thinking, we're getting ready to have some money, because we didn't have any money. Right. If you have a choice of providing basic services, you have to provide the basic services before you put the azaleas in.
Right.
Okay. So we talked about it, and I said, well, we've got to get a really first-class person. So I called Auburn, and there's a fellow there named Ponder, Dr. Ponder, who's been there for 35 or 40 years teaching landscaping. Not landscape architecture, but landscaping. And I said, I need the names of 2 or 3 of your really best people. And he gave me 2. And the first one I called didn't answer, thank goodness. Because the second one I called was Jeff McManus. And he was at the Turnberry Hotel in Miami, which is a 5-star, 2-golf course hotel. I mean, it's like a garden. And so I said, I really would like to talk to you. And he said, well, here I come. So he came up here, and we just connected. We liked each other. I was 30 years older than he is probably, but we just had a lot of the same values. And it didn't take us 10 minutes to figure out that this would be a good move for him and for us. And he said, but there are 2 conditions that, for me taking this job. And I said, well, what are they? He said, first of all, I want to report to you. I don't want to report to anybody between you and me. We'll do this together. And I said, that's my kind of plan. And then he said, I need a pickup truck.
That's it.
I said, well, I think we'll get you a pickup truck. What I didn't know about him at the time was that he is an incredible leader.
Oh, yeah.
He has leadership skills that are uncommon. I really believe you could ask Jeff to take over any major organization, and he'd get that baby organized and running like it's supposed to run. We had 20, I don't give you too much detail here, but we had 29 landscape employees making minimum wage, wearing whatever they wanted to wear to work. Mm-hmm. So Jeff, after about 2 weeks, Jeff said, let me ask you something. He said, the attrition rate is real high, because if you can get a better job, you take it. And morale is terrible. He said, how about if I reduce the number from 29 to 21 and take that money and give them raises? And how about if I buy uniforms for them, put landscape services on it? And I said, that's great, let's go. So he did that. Well, the morale goes like this, of course. And then he begins the training sessions. And he loaded them up on a van, and he took them to Kentucky and to Vanderbilt and to Alabama and to Georgia and to Mississippi State. And he came back here and he said, okay, we're going to be the best in the South. Well, it turned out we became the best in the nation.
Oh, yeah.
And his team matured, and they grew, and they became individually responsible. We bought more equipment for them. They became much more efficient, and the campus has become truly beautiful. And people here, faculty, staff, and students, take pride in it. And I'm not the one picking up trash anymore. I mean, I do if I have to, but other people do it too. It works out just fine, you know.
I had a.
But Jeff is remarkable.
Oh, he is. He's a friend, and he's very, very bright, great leader. But it makes an impact. I mean, my wife she's from Tallahassee, Florida, and her parents put her on a college tour, and they drove around. They went to a bunch of campuses, and they came to Ole Miss. This would have been in about '96, and they drove onto campus from Coliseum Drive, where your new law center is, and got maybe half a mile in, maybe a quarter mile in, and she said, "Dad, turn around. I can't go to school here." Yeah. I mean, it was different then, and how far we've come in that, just the first impressions. It makes a big impact. So give me your proudest moment as a student athlete and as a professional athlete, and then maybe even as chancellor.
Boy,
that may be hard. If you can't do all three, give me one of them.
It's funny when the moment you feel best about didn't involve you, it involved your teammates. And one of the great messages, if I ever do another book, is I've got a lot of team in this one, but I want to talk about the culture of teams and how teammates feel about each other. I guess there are a number of remarkable performances that I could select, but I wasn't even here. 1960, I'd gone to the Redskins, and Ole Miss is playing LSU out here in this stadium. Jake Gibbs has a sprained ankle, and we're trailing 6-3 with something like a minute and 30 seconds left, and we have the ball on our own 10 or 15-yard line. So on one leg, Jake goes back out and boom, 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 and we're down to, say, the 25-yard line with no time left. And Alan Green, who was a center and a kicker, calmly walks out on the field and knocks it right through. So we tie the game 6-6. And I think the courage that Jake demonstrated and his peacefulness and his being cool under pressure. I mean, we talk about every pass is a completion. And he got it down the field, and Allen, with the ice water in his veins, goes out and kicks it right to the upright. So I would say, for me, that's my memories about Ole Miss football. That was probably the greatest sense of, if you want to call it pride. Yeah, it made fill my chest and my eyes with tears, because I think that's just the ultimate in competitive athletics or most anything else. So I think that would be it. For the Redskin years, all my life I wanted to be a New York Yankee. So I wanted to play in Yankee Stadium. And we did. And I went there when I was 12 for the first time ever. And 10 years later, I was 22, and I was playing for the Redskins at Yankee Stadium. And so Billy Brewer, who was on that team, he and I go out on the field before the game, and we ran straight to center field to where those monuments were. And we both sitting there, with tears coming down our cheeks, because it was just so thrilling to be at Yankee Stadium. Well, later in the game, I kicked a 50-yard field goal, which is the longest one I'd ever kicked, and we tied the game 24-24. And so I'd have to say, for pro football, my best memory is that kick. If it had been somewhere else, it wouldn't have felt the same way. But I would say, then
that's pretty cool.
That was a great moment.
What about as chancellor?
As chancellor, there are a lot of greatest moments as chancellor, but I think that, and this gets a little bit maybe vague, but what I wanted to do from the day I became chancellor on was to change the perception of Ole Miss. I wanted us to be, and this is exactly what I told the board of trustees, I wanted us to be and to be perceived as one of America's great public universities. And the way to do that was to be great in everything we did. And the things we couldn't be great in, don't do them. Just don't try to do these. Let Stanford do that, or let's be great where we can be great. And so we worked on that, and we worked hard. And we reached a point during that 14-year period when the attitudes of the faculty, staff, students, and alumni changed. And they began to feel really good about being at Ole Miss. No apologies, no mediocrity, no settling for less than the very best. And it's reflected all over the campus in the performance of everybody, students, faculty, and staff. I think our alumni feel really good about the school. And right now we have academic programs and athletics programs well balanced, and both are prospering.
Right.
There's excitement in both areas. And so I would say probably, although that's not a specific moment, I would say that the transition or the transformation from mediocrity and acceptance of mediocrity and a poor self-perception, moving from that to believing that we were among the best universities in America, really, really makes my heart warm and makes me very, very grateful.
That is a great moment. That really is. Now, the show is called Studio 18 Live, and so the 18, obvious connection to Archie and his mark on this university. I'm sure you have some great Archie stories. Give me just one great Archie story that maybe people don't know.
Okay, I love this story, and it's absolutely true. Some people know that Archie was a good baseball player, and a lot of people don't know that, but he was. And two of our biggest fans were political science professors, George Howell and Don Vaughn. And they sat over behind third base in the old baseball state field every game. And so Archie's playing, and we're playing Alabama, and the score is tied, and we have two people on base. And Archie hits a triple and slides safely into third base. And George Howell turns to Don Vaughn and says, "I think that old boy's going to mess around and make an A in political science." And I think that's a pretty good Archie story.
That is good.
You know, Archie is just such a remarkable person. In this book, I wrote almost a chapter on the Mannings. And I say about Archie that he is the role model's role model.
Wow, and that's
He's not just a role model. I mean, he is somebody who's already a role model could pattern his life after, because the way they've managed their publicity and the ups and downs, and they've had them. This Book of Manning television show laid it out, I thought. And they are such understated, public but private.
right.
Yeah. And that football show became a family show.
That's right.
It was all about love and family and hurt and excitement and babies and deaths. And I mean, it was about a family.
Yes.
And Archie never lost his balance. I was at the law school when he was playing, and Coach Vaught, people were trying to capitalize on Archie's success and notoriety, and Coach Vaught asked me, I don't know anything about it because I'm just getting out of law school, but he said, "I want you to ride shotgun for him. I want you just to watch what's going on and stay tuned in and keep something bad from happening." And like somebody appropriating his name. And so I did.
Right.
And there was a guy who was going to write a book about Archie. And I went to see him. And we had a conversation. It was friendly. I just said, "You can't write the book. You know, you have to have his permission, and he's not giving it, so forget the book." And that was one thing that had me involved a little bit with Archie. I don't even know that Archie knows that I did that. I didn't tell anybody I did it. I just went down to this guy's hometown and told him. But that year, there were Archie buttons. Somebody played the record the other day, the Ballad of Archie Who, to the tune of Folsom Prison Blues. You
That's
know.
right.
But Archie was a phenomenon, and all of us from that era remember the Sports Illustrated when they were trying to name the best quarterback. And I mean, Plunkett was out there, Staubach, I mean, all these great players. But they say, but the best of them all is, and you turn the page, and here's Archie with a straw in his mouth, and red hair and freckled face, little old country boy, you know, and he's the best football player in America, and he was.
That film, The Book of Manning, is just incredible, and it actually shows that page turn in the film, and it is an awesome film, and you're exactly right. It's really a lot less about football and a lot more about family, and
It really is.
I learned a lot in that film.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
It's an incredible film. Well, I really appreciate it. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll come back and we're gonna answer 2 questions from Twitter. But in the meantime, look for these upcoming events on campus, and we'll be right back.
This week on campus, men's and women's basketball season tickets are now on sale and can be purchased by visiting OleMissSports.com or by calling the Rebel Ticket Office at 888-REB-TKTS. The Ole Miss volleyball team continues their homestand this weekend when they host SEC foe Tennessee on Friday night at the Gillum Center. The match begins at 7 p.m. and it's our Red Out night. Fans attending are encouraged to support the team by wearing red. The Ole Miss baseball team will host its annual Red-Blue game on Saturday with the first pitch slated at 12 p.m. The event is free to attend and gives the fans an opportunity to see some of the new faces in the program. Saturday evening, the Ole Miss football team hosts LSU. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. and is the second of 6 straight home games for the Rebels. Tickets for the game are sold out, but limited quantities are still remaining for matchups against Idaho, Arkansas, Troy, and Missouri. To get your tickets, visit OleMissFB.com or call 888-REB-TKTS. Finally, on Sunday, both the Ole Miss volleyball team and your number 25 ranked Ole Miss soccer team are in action on campus at 1 p.m. Both play host to SEC opponent South Carolina. Don't forget to join the voice of the Rebels, David Kellum, and head coach Hugh Freeze at Buffalo Wild Wings every week for our coaches show, Reb Talk. Broadcast begins live at 7 p.m. Arrive early for best seating. Ole Miss students, make sure you're signed up for Rebel Rewards by downloading the free app. For more information, visit rebelrewards.com. For information on these and all other events, go to OleMissSports.com.
All right, we've got a couple of questions that came in through Twitter. The first tweet comes from Jim at the Res, and he says, Dr. Khayat, thank you for all you've done for Ole Miss. Because what is the most difficult decision you had to make as chancellor? Man, that's a tough one. 15 years.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm just going to take a second to answer.
Okay? As long as you want.
Just a little bit of background. One of the things that we had tried to do for years and years and years was attract a chapter of Phi Beta Kappa, and we had never been successful. And so I went to Washington to talk to Doug Ford, who was executive director, and we talked about it. And I said, "Tell me what we have to do." This was in 1996. I'd just become chancellor, and there are no training programs for chancellors. You just start, okay? So I go to see him, and we talked for 2 hours, and finally I said, I need a list. So he said, okay, here you go. Number one, you've got to get the number of library books over a million. We were at 800,000. And books cost about $90 a piece then. So, what's that? I'm not going to try to do the math, but it's a lot. It was a lot. Number two, you have to get the faculty salaries in the liberal arts up to a competitive level. Southeastern United States.
Were we close at the time?
No.
Oh, wow. So we had some ways to go.
Right. Third, you have to have sort of a marquee academic program for students that stands out above everything else. Mm-hmm. Fourth, you have to get the football teams off of probation. We've been on probation twice, and we were on probation in '95. And then fifth, you have to get rid of the Confederate flag. And so the decision I had to make was, are we going to allow the status quo to prevail, or am I going to try to put together a team of people who are willing to work really hard to put together a plan that's measurable, that has we called them key strategies, but they were things like increasing the books, okay?
Right.
Having an honors college, and that was one. Beautifying the campus was one. I mean, the list, there were 21 of them.
I saw the list.
Yeah, there were actually
21 is a very healthy list.
That's a healthy list.
I'm impressed.
And I'll tell you, then this book, I hope this book clearly communicates that this is all about a team of people working together, taking their jobs and doing them well. And so of those 21 strategies, we were able to achieve 20 of them. And the one we didn't achieve was 100 PhDs a year. And that was probably never achievable. We were not big enough. We may be getting big enough now, but that requires a lot of research money and so forth. And so I would say that the answer to the question is that we agreed as a community that we were going to set some new standards and that we were going to make a total commitment to them. And the hard decision, the hardest one of all, had to do with the Confederate flag. Mm-hmm. I was naive. I did not know how volatile that was going to be. I didn't know how divisive, how emotional. And so the minute that the news broke, I realized that we had already made the hardest decision I was going to have to make. Because that went on for 9 months. And there's a big section about that in this book. And there were people all over the country who were engaged in it. And we were on the nightly news and morning news and talk shows and all the big newspapers every day. And mail poured in and death threats and terrible things going on. And finally, after 9 months, and we found a way to resolve it and did, and it went away. And people who'd been so violently opposed to it, for the most part, would come up to me and say, you know, I hated you for doing that, but you were right. I said, well, look, I didn't do this by myself. You know, we did this together. And I did my part, and I agreed to pull the trigger on it.
Right.
But it had to be done. We could not be associated with the Ku Klux Klan and the skinheads and the neo-Nazis. That we lost. If the flag was ever ours, and it really never was, it was a symbolic, but it wasn't ours. It went away in the late 40s and early 50s when it became the emblem of hate groups. We couldn't do that. So I'd say the hardest decision was to pull the trigger on going from satisfaction with mediocrity, status quo, to really striving to be great.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that you wanted us to be known as a great American public university, and those two things are on opposite paths. I mean, they never intersect.
That's
and
right.
So, yeah, that had to be in line with that as well. Before we go to the next Twitter one, special gift for those that did tweet today, and those two tweets that we used we're going to use on screen. They are each getting a copy of your book, and they're getting 2 tickets to the Idaho game. So they're going to get a copy of this book. And so the first one was Jim at the Res, and the second one is George. So George, you're going to get a copy of The Education of a Lifetime, and also 2 tickets to the Idaho game. And George asks, and this is a great question. I'm looking forward to the answer on this one. He says, I've heard stories about the All-Star game in Chicago. What was it really like?
It was really like the story. It became, I'm not going to go into it, it's a long story, but the bottom line is I ended up playing guard in front of Big Daddy Lipscomb. And I was 22 years old. I was 6'2" and I weighed 220. And Eugene Lipscomb was 6'8" and he weighed 300 pounds.
He's more like today's line.
Yeah, like today's line. Yeah, he had me by about 100 pounds. And he had this big black gray beard, and he had a big mask on, and it was night, and we're playing in Chicago, you know, and all of us were somewhat apprehensive about that. But the way the game worked out, I had to play the whole game against Lipscomb. And it was just a total mismatch. It was a man against a child. And so the funny part of the story is that on the first play, I line up and look across the line, and I see his sternum. I don't see his face. You know, usually you can see the guy's face. And so I looked up like this, and there he was, and these great big eyes, that big beard, and he said to me, boy, does your mama know where you are tonight? And I said, yes, sir. And after that, he called me Sweet Pea all night. And of course, Sweet Pea. And I couldn't block him. I mean, it wasn't any way in it.
Physically possible.
So I just tackled him. I grabbed one of those big legs and rode him down. And he'd go, boom, he'd hit me like, hey, Sweet Pea, turn me loose, Sweet Pea. Well, after the game was over, he came over and put his arm around me. He said, Sweet Pea, you're a good boy. You know what, you're a good boy. Good luck to you. Well, I never had a conversation with him, ever, even then. But I did play 3 more games against him. It was almost like, he was almost like, I don't know, something
you
like
were destined to play.
Destined to play against him. We had a preseason game and 2 regular season games against Baltimore, and I was the 6th lineman on the Redskin team. So if somebody got hurt, I played.
Right.
Well, it just so happened that whoever had Lipscomb got hurt the week we played Lipscomb. And so I spent my evenings trying to hold him, afternoons, and then
3 more times.
3 more times, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But that was the education of a life. That one night was the education of a lifetime.
I bet. I bet. Does your mama know where you are? That is awesome. A little bit before we go, you've got several book signings that are coming up.
I do.
We're gonna put up on the screen 5 of them.
Well, thank you.
The next 5. So October the 21st, you're in Greenwood.
Right.
In the Delta, and at Turnrow Books. And then a week after that, you're in Birmingham. This is going to be cool. You're going to be at the SEC headquarters.
Mike Slive is really a great person and a good friend of mine, and he volunteered to host this event at the offices. And I think they're going to be people who may not be interested in the book, but they're going to be curious about the SEC offices.
Oh, I think that'd be
so
neat.
I hope we'll have a good crowd.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in Birmingham, go head out there. That's October the 29th. The next day in Nashville at the University Club at Vanderbilt, and then Laurel and Oxford on Halloween. You're pulling a double header. Laurel at noon at the Lauren Rogers Museum, and then at 5:30, Thacker Mountain Radio. So that's going to be really, really neat.
That'll be fun.
Those are some fun events. I just cannot thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate your time. And so we're gonna close down here. I'm gonna make a couple announcements. We had planned to, after Chancellor Khayat spoke, to talk more about post-game traffic and some of the improvements that we're making there for this upcoming game. We do not have all of the information yet. The law enforcement community are meeting later this afternoon. So as soon as we have that information from law enforcement, we will get that onto OleMissFB.com. So be checking OleMissFB.com tomorrow. We'll also be sending emails out with all of the information regarding parking and game day traffic for this Saturday's game. So check out OleMissFB.com. And lastly, every week this fall, we've been showing you a sneak peek at the season. So tonight's episode in full will air at 6 p.m. on Watch Rebel Vision, the same place where you're watching now. So come back at 6 and watch the full episode, but enjoy this sneak peek, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Studio 18 Live, presented by Old Venice Pizza Company.
Let's go, speed this process up so y'all can get stretched. Water up, get ready to go. We gotta have a great practice now, appreciate it. Here we go, 1st and 10. Let's go, we starting practice. Time to go now. Boom, hey, rush. There you go. Now get him off you. Guys, take on the block and get him off you. Go. Go.
We got to get better with our pad level. We got to get better with our pad level. We got to be able to run the football when it gets tough. At the end of drives, we got to be able to run it in. We got to run the ball better to win this game.
Here we go. Come on, fly around. Red ball right here.
Good job.
Ball key. Quarter.
Get off. Go. Run. Got it. Right there.
Hey, you gotta know quarterback dive every snap. Get your eyes on your key. Hey. Yeah. You're running in there to smash that guard and knock him on his butt. You ain't speed rushing. Good job, Chago. Come on, you got a collision. One collision with your hands. Use your hands. There you go, Wood. Way to work, boy. Way to work. Got to be a better tackling defense. Have to.